Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the afternoon session of the Vasant Vihar Vvlitfest 2021. After a interesting, thought-provoking morning, we are now ready for the second half of our session. Let me just tell you briefly what is in store for us. We have the Aroha Choir. They are a choir group from Shillong. They will be performing at 6:45. Before that, we have an interesting discussion about the relationship between India and US. This is going to be followed. Before that, we have another very topical discussion. That discussion is on COVID and COVID vaccine. And we have three very eminent doctors who will be telling us more about this. And they will be in discussion. And please feel free to ask questions when they are in session. But right now, we have a very interesting session lined up for you. We have three young writers from Vasant Vihar. They are going to tell us more about themselves and how they became writers and what they envisage doing going forward. So welcome Anirudh, Ranya, Arshya. Welcome to Vasant Vihar Vvlitfest 2021. Very happy to have you with us on this virtual platform. Nice to see you guys. I'm going to start by introducing Arshya, who's the youngest here. So Arshya is a student in New Delhi. She is passionate learner, debater, and writer, and has written 21 articles as a teenage consultant for the Daily O, an online opinion and commentary platform that provides current affair news and articles on various subjects. Way to go, Arshya. She also has her own blog called Phoenix Fantasies, where she posts her other writing as well. Arshya was invited for the India Today conclave, which was held in 2019, along with Dr. Shelja Sen, therapist, writer, and the co-founder of Children's First, to give her personal account of her battle with anorexia and depression. Since then, Arshya has founded Read Together, a website that uses multimedia technology to aid and enhance the experience of children who struggle with reading or learning disabilities. Welcome, Arshya.
Thank you so much.
The other person on the panel is Ranya. So Ranya is a 16-year-old author from Vasant Vihar, and she studies at the British School. Having written and published her own book titled Echoes of Tampered Time, along with being elected as the editor, as the part of the student council at the British School, Ranya enjoys expressing herself through writing. And when she is not studying, she bakes and spends time with her dog. So did you do a lot of baking during the lockdown?
Oh, yes, definitely. I've actually learned how to bake several cakes, and I've made many different types of cookies, and that's been wonderful.
Okay, great. I don't know whether you're aware, but during the lockdown, we had lots of Zoom sessions, and kid you not, the most popular were the cooking sessions. We had lots and lots of people join in. So yeah, people enjoy cooking, and they've taken it up in a big way during the lockdown. Anirudh is a third participant here. Anirudh began writing fiction at the age of 5. Wow. His first book was published at the London Book Fair in 2009 at an age of 17, making him the youngest Indian author to do so. Along with writing, fitness, travel, and music are his other interests. His second book was on spirituality. He is currently employed in business, but he tries to take time out to pen his thoughts occasionally. His biggest inspiration growing up was Roald Dahl, and he also enjoys works of George Orwell, Arthur Conan Doyle, Deepak Chopra, and Satyajit Ray, amongst many others. Welcome to three of you to this discussion on young writers of Vasant Vihar.
Thank you. Thank you for
Arshya,
having us, Sanjana.
my pleasure. Arshya, let me start with you first. What got you into writing?
As I mentioned earlier, the passion for writing always came from a really young age. But I only started writing very seriously when I was about 13, when I had a few mental health issues, and I found writing to be very cathartic. At a time when I wasn't too confident about speaking to people about what I felt, writing was the medium through which I communicated about what I felt, my feelings, my emotions. And I found that I could express myself the best through that way. And being an introvert, I think it was rather paradise, where I had, paper and books are man's best friend. So I think having no judgment and just a pen and a paper just made it really easy for me to express myself. And that's where it just all started for me.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. In the morning session, we had Dr. Jay Shankar, who's our external affair minister, and he's written a book as well. And he was talking about that, we all have something to say because he's written a book recently, and we have something to say, and it's very nice when you are able to express that. So I think you've started that doing so at a very young age. Ranya, coming to you, what made you start writing?
Right. So similar to Arshia, I've always had a passion for writing ever since a young age. But I properly started writing my novel when I was 14. And it all began when I had visited the Partition Museum in Amritsar during my break. And it made me feel more strongly for the India-Pakistan partition. So that's where I've started one of my first short stories. And it was about the journey of a family moving across the border from Pakistan to India. And that same year, I had also traveled to Iceland, and I was amazed by the glaciers and the natural landscapes. But I noticed that a lot of the glaciers were melting. So I wrote a story inspired by Iceland and climate change as well. So, because of these personal travels, I was able to feel more strongly for various parts of the world and for historical events. So, I started developing short stories around them, and eventually it developed into an entire novel.
Wonderful. And did you also find that writing was a way of, sharing what you were experiencing? Is that
Yes,
what prompted you to write?
definitely, yeah. Because it gave me a medium to express myself and express my thoughts effectively in a way that I felt very comfortable doing so.
Okay. Anirudh, you started writing at the age of 5, as I just read out. How did you start writing so early?
I have my class one teacher to thank because I was a very poor student of mathematics, and my class teacher was the subject teacher of the same. And she and I never saw eye to eye. So one day, as a punishment, she gave me an assignment to write a 5-page article on family. And the condition was that I could not write about my own family. So when I went home, I was caught in a fix. I called my best friend at the time and I asked him to give me pointers. And he very simply said that I have a mother, I have a father, I have an elder sister, everybody's nice. And I said, that's not 5 pages worth. What do I do? So I created a short story on this subject about how this king has a son, and the son is in line for the throne, but the son is not interested in leading the kingdom. He wants to paint and he wants to be an artist. And eventually he goes through this series of events which ultimately make him realize that he can paint, but there's great honor and responsibility in being the king. So eventually he does come around to doing that.
Right.
So when I presented this to the teacher the next day, she didn't believe that I had written it. So she sent me to the administrator, who read it, and then she told me that, do you write like this more often? I said, I don't write, but I can. I mean, it's easy for me. So she said, okay, so keep writing and show it to me. And that's how it just happened. And she encouraged me. The administrator was the lady who sort of pushed me to write. And the beauty of how she did it was that I think this was in class one, but until class nine, I had kept giving her my stories to check and check the grammar and spelling.
Mm-hmm.
And never once in that decade of reading my works, never once did she give me a bad remark.
Oh, wonderful.
Even if the
Okay.
story was absolute rubbish, she
Right.
would just say good effort or give me a sticker or a star.
Right.
And that was the reason why it just became more and more an attraction for me to write, because I think somewhere that is the biggest sort of uh, one of the biggest motivators for a person to keep doing what they're doing, that you always have that one person who's always in your corner, who's always giving you encouragement. Doesn't matter if you don't do it right or you don't do it to the best of
Mm-hmm.
your ability, but they keep pushing you to stay at it, and that's what eventually gets you somewhere.
Okay. Um, so does the environment make a difference? The sort of environment you're surrounded by, like I think Rania, because she's been traveling, the environment which she's been has encouraged her or prompted her to write about her experiences. Rania, tell us more about where you have traveled, what you have seen, and why did you want to share all these things with the others? Because when you write and you publish something, you're sharing it with others, isn't it?
Yeah. So, getting back to what you had said about the environment, I think it plays a huge part in what you write. So, I had traveled to many places. I traveled to Iceland. I went to Amritsar, as I mentioned. I went to the Alcatraz prison, which is in the U.S. And these experiences really play a part in your writing because they inspire you and they help, you know, stir your creativity. And specifically to the India Pakistan one,
Mm-hmm.
because of my because I'm in an Indian environment and I have so many relatives and people who I know who have lived through the event. It helped stir a lot more creativity because I talked to a lot of my relatives about it and I went, wow, I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for my great grandparents and my other family. And thoughts like these, they help you connect better to the event, and it helps you enhance your writing a lot more. And the reason I'm using this one story is because it was one of the most emotional ones in the book because of the circumstances and the environment I am in.
Okay. Did you grow up listening to stories about partition from your grandparents? And do you think somewhere that impacted you? And then when you went to the partition museum, those
Yeah,
memories came alive.
yeah.
Is that
It was
something that
exactly
happened?
like that. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Um, well, things like that have a very profound effect on people.
definitely.
Arshia, you started writing for a completely different reason. Um, do you think it has helped you writing about what you feel?
Yes, definitely. I think writing for me at that time, at least, was the most therapeutic way of getting through what I was going through. And I think writing at the end of the day is a form of expression. And I think man, since history, has found a way to express himself. Earlier, when during the Stone Age, he would shout. Now, well, people use emojis to express themselves, but I think people use different mediums to express themselves, and they use what's most suitable to them and what they're best at. And I chose writing because it came very natural to me. So I think that way, um, I just chose something that was natural. It helped me get through some tough times, and yeah, it ended up becoming just reinforcing the fact of why I loved it so much.
It's interesting you mentioned the uh, emojis. In this day and age of social media, of communicating with each other over just a few symbols, do you think you all as a generation are missing out on something of being able to, I mean, express yourself better? Is that something which you feel I mean, you are writing and you are being able to express yourself. But what about your friends? Are they able to express themselves, or do they just resort to using emojis as a way of expressing themselves?
I do believe that many reasons why the world is afflicted with so many mental health issues today is because of so much digitalization. I do feel that because we restrict anger to an angry red face or happiness to that crying emoji, there are
Mm-hmm.
some bottled up emotions inside of us which we never express. And I do feel that sometimes you may call it old school, but I think there was a reason why the good old days are called the good old days, if you know what I mean.
You're
So
far too young to be saying that.
yeah, but
Yeah. No,
but I
you're
think
far too young to be
intentionality
saying
and
that. Yeah.
authenticity is
Right.
something that's always good.
Yeah, but coming from somebody of your age, you know, very often we forget how you all have your own battles to fight, and being able to express yourself through maybe a small angry face is a huge expression, and one should not take it lightly, right? Anirudh, you have written about spirituality. What prompted you to, from writing stories, to write about spirituality?
So actually, spirituality and me, we formed this connection because during my college time, I had great difficulty in understanding the phrase "be yourself," because I was
Mm-hmm.
always caught in this dilemma on how to behave in my surroundings. So I went from a convent school to a class of 60 girls and 10 boys. So that was a shock in itself. Then understanding the difference between the sort of capitalistic background that I'm from, this bubble of Vasant Vihar, to the sort of Marxist ideologies of North Campus. I had gone to Hansraj, and uh, and it was a lot of sudden changes because school at St. Columbus was very disciplined. Hansraj was completely free. There was no monitoring of how you did what you did outside of class. So there was a lot for me to catch up on, and I started asking questions that people could not give me answers to. So that's what fueled my search, and I stumbled upon spirituality, and that got me calmer and closer to myself. It helped me understand that I don't need to be on the edge all the time. I don't need to behave a certain way to fit in everywhere. I can be myself. And what does it mean to be yourself? You know, because at that age, you're still understanding how labels are influencing you, what is molding your thought process, because you're still learning. You're not formed yet. You're forming. You know, and that's how the search sort of started. And over a period of time, I dwelled further and further, and then I realized that spirituality is actually the backbone of a good life. So if you have that foundation, uh, then there's nothing stopping you from achieving your dreams and creating happiness for others. But if you don't have that, then I personally believe you can't lead a happy life without it.
Okay, no, you've said something very, important, that happiness is not just about yourself. It is also happiness when others are happy around you.
Absolutely.
That actually what creates happiness.
Absolutely.
Um, Rania, in this day and age when everything is online, and especially because of COVID, there's been a complete switch to going digital and being online. Do you think people will have time to read your book?
Well, I think this is a great question. I hope so. Um, I've put a lot of work into it, so it would be nice if they read it. But I think it's less about it being digital and more people giving time to read. Because as we know, reading is slowly becoming a dying habit, which is
That's
actually
right.
quite sad. People would rather their sources of entertainment are TV shows, movies, social media, and I think this is quite sad because reading gives you the possibility to explore your creativity and visualize beyond what's even possible on a television screen. And the fact that so many people aren't reading and seeing it more of a task is quite
Yes.
sad and unfortunate.
Do you feel that when you read something as a book, and this is the book which Ranya has written, this is the cover and this is the book, do you feel when you read a book vis-a-vis when you read something off a screen, you understand things differently?
Yes, definitely, definitely. Because the thing about reading is you can interpret the same thing in so many different ways. You can visualize it in so many different ways. Like if I say I'm sitting in a restaurant, the way that I'd picture it and the way that you'd picture it would be different. And because there are so many different interpretations, you know, yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Um, Arshya, is there a writer who you look up to, who inspires you, and perhaps one day going forward, you may want to emulate that person? Do you have somebody like that in mind?
I tried not to get too inspired by anybody because I feel like then
That's a very smart answer.
because
That's
I
a very
think
smart answer.
no, but I think as creative thinkers, I think it is important also to have that line of difference of creative differences, so you do not get pigeonholed into that category of writing. But yes, I do really admire Virginia Woolf's work. I think she was a fierce woman, much ahead of her times, and I really admire everything that she's written, especially Room of One's Own, where she wrote about Shakespeare's sister, which is so applicable to this time today about resources that not only women but other people that do not have. And if they had those resources, what could it do with their potential?
Wow. Now, how do you read? Do you read it online or do you buy paperback? How do you read your books?
So,
Because I have a copy of your book here, which is very pretty as well. But how do you enjoy reading?
Just a couple of years back, when Kindle initially came out, I was very excited by this new technology that, advertising and PR and all. I was really excited and I asked for that for my birthday. And not the best thing, but I've only ever read on it once because I realized that I would like to hold a book in my hand and feel the pages. And it's just different. I think reading itself is an experience as much as people think that it's just rolling your eyeballs and just scribbling through and going through a few words. I think it's so much more than that. So I think it definitely, for me personally, I love to just hold a book in my hand. But the fact that people now want to use Kindle, that's fine too. I think as long as you're reading, that's good.
It's not just Kindle now, you have audiobooks as
Yes.
well, right? Have you heard any audiobooks? Do you think they do justice to the way when you read a book, you feel a certain degree of comfort or you visualize things. But when you hear something in somebody else's voice, does that make the whole experience very different?
Yes, definitely. It's definitely a little bit less personal. Like Rania said, it's not as much open to interpretation because your imagination is clouded by another person would visualize something or another person would express a certain way. If I were to, read the lines of Voldemort, or if someone else was to read the lines of Voldemort, it would make a lot of difference. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. Anirudh, how do you feel? I mean, you must have seen so many changes over the past, what, almost 10-15 years since when you first wrote and published what you'd written to now. Do you think, how has that journey been for you?
Oh, enlightening. I could have never imagined. See, where I come from, when I published my book, I was already part of that time where people had started saying that publishing is dead, and reading books is going to be a thing of the past, because newspapers had just started, at least in our country, media houses had just started exploring the idea of having a website and an e-paper, and reducing circulation. And there was this big debate, is media changing to becoming all online, and are the old ways going to die? And now when I look back, I can see that the way the West and the way the East has tackled this question, the West
Right.
has completely become digitized, and India is going on that track as well. We're just taking more time because we firstly don't have the infrastructure, and secondly, a lot of us are so sort of in depth into the old ways that they're unwilling to change. That's why watching television and reading a newspaper in your hand still has a lot more meaning here than it would have abroad. Uh, but the way I've seen it is that writing has now become a part of the content industry. Writing as writing has now, writing has to be linked with something to have meaning of its own. So if you're writing books, if you're right, see, thing with fiction is that if I read a fictional book today, or if I read it 100 years later, yes, maybe the surroundings would have changed, but the basic, the storyline will still have appeal. But if I'm reading a book, say by Raghuram Rajam, which is it's factually based and it's based on his tenure, a lot of the books today that are knowledge based will not have relevance, even 6
Mhm.
months later, maybe, because that those the data
They
banks
become
have changed.
outdated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the whole process has become, because information has become so much more fluid, and
Right.
the way to access it has changed. So
Mm-hmm.
I see writing surviving in order when it's clubbed with other work. Like, for example,
Okay.
a guy who's a screenwriter, if he becomes a part of a series for Netflix, then he
Right.
will always have relevance, but if
Right.
you're trying to make it as a writer solely with your own imagination and solely with your own universe, I think it's very difficult to do in today's day and age, especially because you can't compete with, there's too many platforms to access content, and you are a part of the content industry at the end of the day.
Right.
You need to find your niche and figure out where is the space you belong.
It seems you've been down that path.
Oh, I'm still there. Every day is
Okay.
a new struggle.
Right. Um, I have a question here. Anirudh, it's interesting and heartening to know that your English teacher's encouragement inspired you to write. I was an
Mathematics.
English teacher as well, English and maths teacher.
Okay.
Very difficult to have them both together. The
Yes,
same
that's quite a
person
feat, I
teaching
must
you.
say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was an English teacher as well, and that's always been my endeavor to encourage children to write. What were the other problems you faced?
uh, this is actually a very good question, Sanjana. Thank you for asking it. Um, it's interesting because this whole process has been so close to a part of shaping my personality over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When I was writing as a child, it was just something I did for fun, and my parents, my teachers would encourage me, so I kept doing it. It
Right.
was in the sixth grade that a person actually suggested that I should consider publishing. And initially, publishing was very difficult. We met people who demanded money. We had interactions with people who've lost some of my original manuscripts. I've never got them back. And it was
Okay.
finally in class 12 that we met somebody who was committed to the cause and helped us create a book out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when the first book came, I realized that there is a big difference between writing a book and publishing a book, because writing is the art. Writing is where your creative spirit actually is put to the test. But publishing is a business, and marketing it and getting it out there and PR. This is a whole different world. Uh, and now it's, even then it was very formal and very calculated. But as a writer, it can take a toll on you. It can, because I personally, I was a very sensitive child, and being labeled as, on one hand, getting all this attention at age 17 because you published a book and, London Book Fair. And my book was, I was literally on the stage with Mr. Javed Akhtar and Mr. Vikram Seth, and I did not feel like I belonged there. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a great honor. I didn't shun away from it, but I said, these guys are giants. What am I? And
Right.
but they leave an impact, and I would say the only reason I was able to get through that was because I had the support of my parents and good friends to keep reminding me that
Mm-hmm.
you got to stay on the ground. Don't let your head hit the sky, because it's very easy to get dissuaded to believing that you're a prodigy or you're a genius. No, I'm just a kid who started writing early.
Right.
I mean, if anybody spends 10 years writing, I'm sure they'll come out with some kind of a book. It's not a difficult thing to do.
There's a story inside everyone.
Yeah, and it's like what
Okay.
Arshya said. This is a medium of self-expression.
Right.
Anybody can find their own medium. It could be painting, it could be dancing, it could be any other thing. This is one of the mediums which
Right.
worked for us, which is why we did it. It was
Right.
that simple.
Rania, let me just come back to you, and this will be perhaps the last question. I mean, I'm sure we can have another session on conversation between the three of you. Rania, you published your own book?
No, I went with a publishing company called Notion Press.
Okay. How was that experience for you?
Well, I'd say it was a bit difficult, the publishing process, because
Okay.
first you have to send out your manuscript to many different publishing companies, and having to deal with rejections is quite tough. See, the thing is, we're all human. So,
Right.
despite this being work, feelings are still involved. And then picking yourself up after those rejections and continuing to look for another publisher, the process becomes difficult. But
Right.
luckily, I was able to find a publisher, and that made the process a lot simpler.
Thank you. A quick tip from the three of you for people who are writing and who want to publish. Starting with you, Arshia, what would you tell them?
I think writing comes out best when you have something to say that's yours and something that you can truly call your own. I
Mm-hmm.
think when you base your writing on your experiences, on what you feel is right, and what you define that imagination to be, or what you define that truth to be, that's
Mm-hmm.
when I think the best creative juices flow. And I think as for when it comes to publication and all, I really agree with Anirudh. And I think you just need to find the right platform to do so. There's so many platforms now where you can display writing, and it's not just in the form of a book or an article. You can do it through script writing and all. So I think that's definitely the way to go, not just restricted to an article or a book, but to see all other platforms, different ways of writing. And I think that should keep you happy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anirudh, very quickly because we're running out of time.
If you're looking to be a writer, just keep writing. If you're looking to publish, take your time. Don't be in a hurry to publish it.
Okay.
I think the
That's
way
from somebody who's traveled down that road.
the way the Bhagavad Gita says it is the best. Karm khiyal ja, phal ki chinta na kar. So just keep writing. The publishing a time aega, aram se. There's no hurry.
Okay. Rania?
I would just say go for it. Writing is, after all, a medium of self expression. So, as long as you're just doing what you love, you should be able to do it. And of course, the first draft is most important, but you can keep editing and making corrections and adding stuff afterwards, but just go for it. And, when you start, that's like the biggest step you can take. And once you've taken that step, then everything should just fall into place.
Great. Thank you. That was very, very interesting listening to the three of you at different stages of your writing career. But, you kind of have similar experiences. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we wish you well going forward. And take care and keep writing and publishing. And perhaps we will host you as an author sometime down the road at the Vasant Vihar Fest.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this honor.
Okay,
It's been a
bye-bye.
pleasure.
And here we have Niyamat Bindra and Geeta Kumar in conversation talking about women health and women empowerment. Geeta, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sanjana. Hi, Niyamat.
Hi.
It's
Hi.
wonderful to connect with you once again.
Good
And it's a
afternoon.
wonderful opportunity to introduce you all viewers and participants on this conversation with Niyamat on
Thank
her
you.
wonderful initiative that she has rolled out through her book, Spreading Your Wings, an educational book which teaches girls to value and care for their bodies. I think it's a 110-page comic book in
Yeah.
Hindi and English about puberty, menstrual hygiene, social norms for girls in rural India. So that's what we're going to be having our chat today. But before we begin, let me spotlight and showcase Niyamat to you all. Niyamat is a passionate person who comes with over 14 years of work experience in the development sector. She works very closely on gender rights and women's health. And the best part of Niyamat's work is that she works to multiple formats. And I think she has a very clear purpose of ensuring that it reaches the last mile. I mean, it's the lowest denominator. So it's not theoretical, it's not just, out there as a policy, but what will actually make the impact at the ground. I think that's what, and therefore, if you see, her skills are varied. It ranges from project implementation, advocacy, preparing training modules, researching, managing events. She's organized Earth Mela 4 times. And she's also been a consultant to FemiCon Edition. It's in India's only women's health festival. In fact, I remember Niyamat when Ananya, my daughter, set up her Crimson project on sustainable sanitary pads. She was the first person she reached out to,
Yeah, yeah.
and
We
you
did a
opened out
training.
so many doors for them, as the project. So
We all worked
welcome,
together. Thank you.
and let's talk a little more. But just to let the audience know, we have the chat box open, and since this is going to be a free-flowing conversation, please join us in our conversation through the chat, and we'll take up all your ideas as well as your points in as we move along. Niyamat, let's first look at your book. And would it be possible for you to share it to the viewers and the audience? Yeah,
Yeah, so I've just
have a look
shared
at
a
this.
screen, and it's just a little bit about the book, which is it's called Spreading Your Wings. It's a body positive comic book on gender health and gender norms and breaking period myths. So the book is actually it's a comic format, and the reason why we moved to a comic format is because we didn't want it to be very textual. We wanted it to be very animated, colorful, so that everybody can connect to it. So that was the main thing. We crowdfunded this book because we didn't want to attach ourselves to a certain brand or a product, because we wanted to share the focus on menstrual health and hygiene. Um, and the book actually takes the girl or the boy or the young mother through a journey in a conversation with Didi. So it could be a Asha worker, it could be anybody, and we've also made it in such a way so that you can act it out. So we actually do, when we do take this book outside, we do act it out. It's like a play also. You can do it like you can present it like that as well. So we focus on firstly your body, using the right words for the right body parts. That's the main thing: loving your body, respecting it, calling it the way, and then focusing a little bit on good touch, bad touch. Then what is the menstrual cycle, diet, food, sleep. We have a module on training of trainers, so we can train people on how to conduct sessions. We have a session. We have a page on making your own pads, which, and of course disposal as well, and myths and debunking those myths, such as shall I how often do I need to have a bath? Should I do this? Should I do that? Don't touch the pickle. All these things. So we've actually done it in a way which is very contemporary, and of course the times are changing. I mean, our book is now of over 3.5 years, so, and a lot has changed also. But we're planning to actually have this book in multiple Indian languages, Swahili, as well as in Braille. So we want the specially able also to access the book. So that is the vision of the book. The book is we're planning to also take the book to schools, in colleges in Delhi. We've been given the opportunity, but due to the lockdown, it's delayed. So that's the idea. The idea is to love your body, respect your body, know your body. That's very important. So that was, and all of us have not taken a penny for this book. We're all women who've decided that this is what we want to do. This is what we want to. And actually, I'll tell you why we started this. It's because I was actually in um, a village in Bihar, and we were teaching and we were talking about this. And then I said, you know what, I'm moving on to a different organization. So this young girl came to me and said, but you're going to take what you know with you. And I'm looking at her, I was like, you know what, that's so right, because we take the knowledge with us, we should empower them. So she came out and she said, you know, can you give me some points? And on a little scrap of paper she wrote a few points. And then, you know, I something didn't feel right when I came back, and I spoke to a few colleagues and I said, you know what, we gotta give them the power. We cannot just be like, hum aayenge, hum sikhayenge, hum jayenge. You know, you need to take something back home. And I don't think there is anything better than a book. A book is your friend. And like my previous panelists have said, it takes you on a journey. It takes you on in a different world. You can interpret it the way you want. It's your friend, it's your companion, it's your saheli, it's your dost, it's your mother, it's your friend. So that's the idea of the book. And having a book, something that you could read. And we always have advocated reading, writing, learning. So the idea of opening a book, reading, going through it, taking your time, stopping, thinking, you know, that that was the idea. So that's why a book.
And I think the comic format itself is so empowering for people who are not even educated, because it's so easy to understand. It's so and as you said, it's flexible. It just answers what you need to know at that point of time. It empowers the women to take charge of their own bodies and their whole reproductive, the
Correct,
hygiene
correct,
part.
correct.
And you don't need to be educated. And I think that's where the beauty of your work is, Niyamat, that
Thank you.
it
It's
goes to the right set of people, right to the
yeah.
ground. And that's something
And the
excellent.
idea was to make them have a basket of choices. So we don't say use a pad or use a menstrual cup or use a use a certain brand sanitary pad, or you can make your own cloth. The idea is menstrual health and hygiene and management. What you use is your choice. You need to adhere to certain norms of hand wash, cleaning, washing, frequent, and whatever issues. And of course we do a plus with a talk with a gynae, and if girls have other further issues, we do. When we go out in the field, we do plus in terms of we have a health camp, so we talk about the book, we act it, we also do a food demonstration on fortified food, so that the girl knows that iron deficiency, a lot of young girls face that during the menstrual cycle, the early years. So we do, we talk about like fortified dal, easy recipe. You can put pudina, you can put little bit of in your dals only you can put stuff, which is a very staple thing. So we're not advocating ki sabse महंगी चीज लो या सबसे सस्ती चीज लो. No, what is available, use that. But hand wash, go to the washroom, change your pad regularly. That is the idea. And of course the number of issues also affected. Then a lot of girls also say that they have a lot of other health issues related to that. So that also comes out. A lot of people said, we started just basic something, like we started just doing yoga, or we just started doing eating on time, or we started having healthy food, and we were not facing any pain and stuff. So just even if a girl takes away one thing from our book, I think we've just done what we had to do with the book. I think that was the idea. It's a passion project. It's something that my entire group believed in. We crowdfunded the whole thing, and in fact, we were out of funds in between. We had to
So tell
restart
me,
it.
so tell me, Niyamat, as a researcher and as a publisher, and it was a team that came together to
Correct.
put this. So I'm
It
sure there
wasn't
must have
easy.
been many challenges and hurdles.
Yeah,
And how was
we
that journey?
So the journey was, I wouldn't say it was easy. It was very difficult because we didn't know where to start. We were contacting, we were from a draft to finding an illustrator to finding someone who was on the same wavelength as us. And then actually moving, to finding a publisher. So we found Zuban Publishing House, which is in Delhi. We went to them, we spoke to them, we found a few others also. Then our printing was stopped because of COVID, our Hindi book. So that was a challenge. Then we moved to, then during the COVID, because girls did not have access to, pads and all during the lockdown. So we did a sort of thing of mask and pad. So we trained a lot of our girls to make masks and pads. So that was the time, that was the need. So we were doing massive trainings across a lot of SAGs, a lot of NGOs, ki how to make a pad, because that was the need. So that was another takeaway from our book. What else we faced? A lot of challenges, budgeting. different timelines. We had very difficult timelines. We working in different time zones. I was in Delhi, a colleague of mine was in the US, somebody was in Rajasthan. So we had it was, and then everybody's views, everybody's ideas, what did they want to take away, what did and then in terms of even illustrating, coloring, we had to find a person for the coloring, we had to find somebody. And the main thing was like, what how are we going to find a publisher, how are we going to do this? And we went to the printing press. We found that the printing press, the paper was not what we wanted, so we had to change the paper. The budget changed it again because the quality of paper. So it's like you learn as you go. We did None of us are trained, none of us have ever written a book, none of us have ever we've researched, so but we've never done it like this. So it was really, we as we were moving on, we were learning. We faced a lot of struggles, a lot of failures, a lot of setbacks. There were times when I was like, nahi karna hai ye, nahi karna, it's just not worth it. Yeah, it's just a book. Yeah, we can make it a white paper. Why do you want a book? So, but we believed, we
I
fell,
think,
we
yeah,
worked.
the intent kind of
It took us, it
gave
took
you
us,
the
it took us
power
two
to,
years. It took us 2 years, and then the money was in US dollars. We had to get it back, and then what we had budgeted in US, the currency changed, so we lost more money. So
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
but
So
we
just
managed.
if you were to do it all over again, another set of initiative, and of course, COVID not having been very helpful, creating additional setbacks and hurdles. So, what are the things that if you were to, advise anyone who's like wanting to get in here into the space of writing or publishing a book which is more on the advocacy space, which is probably not mainstream, it may not even be a bestseller, but what is the four things that one, besides the motivation and the intent, of course, that they should be looking for?
I think you should research well. I think you should really get the right person for the right job. It's very important. If somebody is very good at proofreading in a certain language, please get that person. If somebody is very good with animation, please get that person. So get the right person for the right job. So really hire well, or get a team of that is, that would be suited for the skill, whichever skill you're looking at. Budget is very important. Whatever your budget, really, really well. Unforeseen expenses always happen. So please budget well. And I think in terms of and give yourself time in terms of like, yeah, so you do have a timeline, but like in terms of finding a publishing house, in terms of getting the right publisher to come on board, give yourself time, talk to people, introduce your book, share it, you know and don't give up, don't give up. I think
Yeah.
that would, these are my learnings. This is what I would do. And of course, depends upon what your topic is. I mean, if you feel that your topic is contemporary, or you feel that you want to share this message, or you want to share that this is something I want to say, I want to research, I want to work on this, sure, go ahead. Believe in yourself and just do it. But these are 4 5 things where we struggled. And now, if we had to do it again, or what we are doing with our other books, we are learning. So we're taking our time. We're taking our time.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important learning, that these things cannot be rushed. It has to be well thought through. So here's another. I would wanted to ask you, Niyamat, is that you looked at crowd. You funded your book through crowdsourcing,
Kickstarter.
and yeah,
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter. And probably, yes, they would have also had hiccups. So probably it suddenly picks up pace, and then suddenly, because of some other external situations, you suddenly seem to be moving, you're static and stagnant.
Correct.
So is there any other way one could look at in terms of financing, other than crowdsourcing, that you have explored or you think is possible beyond now, based on your experience?
So we did go to a few donors. We did go to a few people who we thought would help us and encourage us, people in this space. But some of them were reluctant. Some of them wanted a whole proper plan as to what is our budget, what are we really strategizing, how we. So we did go to a few people. A few of us dipped into some of our savings, not much, but we dipped into some of our savings. I think these are according to me, these are the few. If there is some government that wants to help you. That could be one thing, but we wanted to crowdsource it because we wanted to make it transparent. We wanted to make the book everybody's book. So that was our idea. But I'm sure you can look at these options. You can do partial funding. Some universities give grants, some universities also give grants. So maybe you can approach your university or your organization and say, look, I'm planning to do this. Would you like to contribute? So I know a colleague of mine who was a part of this project. She spoke to her colleagues in office. So they said, we would like to help you. So I think she got some support from there. So she spoke about it. She talked, pitched it. Another thing is that these maybe some venture capitalists or somebody like that could also be interested, but we didn't we didn't know, so we
It's
didn't
always
know.
a
Yeah.
learning, yes.
But I think these are the 6-7 places where if you have to look at it, you need financial help. I think these are some places you can look.
And they should. I mean, anybody who wants to look at what your advice would be, that you please approach and look at all of them and vet out, because you never know
Yeah.
which would work and how much of each would
Yeah.
add in terms of the value. All
Correct.
right. So this is, you also mentioned, Niyamat, that COVID was, in a way, an opportunity as well as a challenge. So I think what you mentioned as an opportunity was that you were able to, channelize these women to actually start making the pads, and even, use this as an opportunity to, create some kind of a economic financial model for themselves by selling masks. But which are the other things of the setbacks that you have encountered overall in women's health? I think COVID has been particularly bad in terms of women's health
So
focus.
So of course physical, of course mental. There are a lot of people who would come to us and still are now coping and having problems in terms of job loss, no, just domestic violence and things like that. So we did get a lot of people discussing all those issues. So we were combating all that along with the basic thing of menstrual health and hygiene also, because products were not being could not reach the urban poor and the rural poor, because migrants were going out on the road going home and toilets were shut. So there were things like that, and supply was slow, roads were blocked, toilets were closed. So we had those huge issues.
And they all
But mental
real
health,
practical
I think,
issues.
yeah, practical issues, and like I think 45% of the urban youth did not even go, women didn't get access, even though you had like a shop in your, down the road, it was shut. And how much are you going to hoard? You don't know when this is going to end.
And there's
But
no money
yes,
like that to hoard as well, in an
and
average.
toilet, yeah, and then you're staying with, some girls were staying in small houses with their brothers and their, husbands, and so it was difficult. But mental health, and I believe you are the right person, and you've done great work in that. So we had a big challenge with mental health. We're not mental health experts, so we were looking for people who would help us with, advice on that. So can you also just share a little bit about what you have done? Because it would be really nice, because we couldn't bridge that gap. We were just at that time just getting these pads out, because our focus was that, yeah, like these women who just didn't have this. So but yeah, so mental health was something that we could not we didn't know what to do actually at that time.
Yeah, Niyamat. So actually, I'm very passionate about well-being, and typically I work with the corporate women professionals. But I think I mean, and when well-being, we're talking about the whole holistic well-being, and a large part of it includes the emotional and mental well-being of individuals, especially women. And I think that's across the board. So irrespective of whichever socioeconomic strata that women come from, this has been, and it's a continuous challenge, and COVID has actually magnified the the negative impacts of this. And I think there are all very simple tips, and the things that is possible, and that's where the work that you do, the advocacy that you put right to the ground, on the ground, is very important. And I think this first starting point is that well-being matters, and to take it into our own hands, and women need to do that for themselves. And
I think
they all
that's a very important message, Geeta, that
yes,
we have to take the onus, and we have to take well-being in our own hands.
yeah,
And
and that's
there's no two ways about it.
That's
And
the only starting point for anything that you try, because unless you take responsibility for it yourself, there's nothing which is going to happen. External environment would keep, changing and, creating so many difficulties. And so self-care, and I think somewhere, very deep down, neglecting ourselves has become a value and a virtue, and that is something, there's a huge advocacy, Niyamat, probably you'll need to do in terms of, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be available to anybody. And, if a woman takes care of her health, the entire ecosystem around gets well.
Can you share 2 or 3 tips? Can you share 2 or 3 tips?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm not going into the diet piece, but a very simple tip is how underrated sleep is. Good quality, adequate sleep is a huge restoration to mental health. And I think that's the simplest, most available tool that we have for ourselves. You don't need medication. You don't need, and I think that takes care of all your stresses, your strains, all the toxic, the physical aches and pains get taken care with good and adequate sleep. I think that is an extremely underrated, element of well-being. But I think if one takes care of that, a lot of it falls in place. Exercise. So if you look at women's health and reproductive health, or it is even this whole osteoporosis, which is so common, which is so unsaid and untalked about, and it's across all socioeconomic sectors and strata of women. And I think exercise, the suppleness, the agility is very, very critical for your bone and your density. And I think these are very simple tools. I mean, obviously, good diet, it's not available to everybody, but I think diet, is something which is a thing. I think more importantly is the support group, asking and reaching out. So rest, recreation, restoration, which is sleep, as well as creating a peer group, whether it is families, whether it is friends, whether it is colleagues. You need that for your mental well-being. And I think there is no taking away from that. And I think that's something that I'm sure you are working with, and probably that will be your stage too. So let us hear, as we are closing, we are just 4 minutes down. Sanjana, is that right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say a little bit about Niyamat and about you, and why you are the right people to be talking about it. So Niyamat comes with a 14-year experience in development sector, mostly with gender rights and women's health, right, Niyamat?
Yes.
Her skills range from project implementation, advocacy, preparing training modules.
Sanjana, we've shared that.
Okay. And Geeta, a little bit about you too. I mean, Geeta is an OD consultant, a trainer, a coach, a facilitator, and an HR professional. And she is very passionate about gender right issues. And that's why we have them part of our Vvlitfest talking about women health and gender equality, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being part of the Vvlitfest. And I think what you two have spoken about, we probably need another longer session to talk more about what Geeta is talking about, restoration, about sleep, about, having support, peer group, people who will support each other. I think that is so important, and it is something which we don't value enough. And that is very important for women's health. And also one other thing which we don't talk often about is menopause, because that's again one area where women undergo so many changes in their body, in their hormones, and we don't talk about it enough, and we just think it will it will just go away by itself. So perhaps that's a topic you can
Part 2 of the book.
Yeah, it's a series in reproductive health. So when we start with menstrual health, we talk about reproduction and maternal health, and then we talk about the post-reproductive, which is the menopausal, So I think there are 3 stages to our reproductive health that we need to definitely take care of. Yes.
Yes.
So
thank you very much.
Sanjana, I'm not able to see them.
Yeah, there aren't any questions, and it's time for the next session. So I would like to thank Niyamat and thank you, Geeta.
Thank you. for having me.
And
Thank you,
you're still
Sanjana. It was a
young, and
pleasure.
you have a way to go. So do think about those sequels to your book.
Thank you. I will. I definitely will. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
On that happy note,
Thank you.
we
Thank
wrap up
you.
this session. The next session will be starting shortly with my co-host, Raj Sharma. Thank you.
Thank you.